Welcome back to Espresso Live on SABC3, and it's Monday, and we're starting our financial talk this week, and the topic of the week is how I wish I knew, or the things I wish I knew. And
if I only knew.
If I only knew that thing, which I hope you won't be saying after what we talk about
Obviously,
today.
you didn't have enough sleep last night.
No, I didn't. I didn't. Okay. But for most people, the most romantic words they can hear on their wedding day is, "With this ring I thee wed." But there's a lot more to consider than this ring that you thee wed with.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We're talking about marriage, the different ways in which one can get married. You can get married in a garden, on the beach, in a chapel. No, not that kind of it. Tell us what we're talking about today.
Yeah, excellent. I think the first thing we want to touch on before we get to the type of marital regimes is there's probably about 40% of Americans and probably close to about 5 million South Africans that are purely just living together.
Okay, right.
And the challenge about cohabitation is unless there's a contract that regulates the assets that you buy together.
Yes.
Because your intention is just never to get married, or whatever the intention is, that you don't have any protection when the partnership dissolves. So if you decide to then go your own way, what happens to the assets that you own together?
Yeah.
So the best advice that I can encourage people to do if they're cohabitating, in other words, they're living together without the intention of getting married, is that if they buy any assets, like a property together, that they enter into a partnership agreement or a cohabitation agreement to regulate those assets if anything should go wrong.
This is starting to get a lot more complex than, you know, the actual, there we go. But okay, so what are the different ways in which one can get married?
All right, so the important thing is that if you do not enter into an antenuptial agreement, the antenuptial is out of community of property.
Yes.
If you don't enter into an antenuptial agreement before you get married, so the beach scene, in the garden scene, if you don't enter into an antenuptial agreement, you are married in community of property.
By assumption. So if you haven't done it, then you are.
That you are. So you can't go after the marriage and say, well, now I want to structure an antenuptial contract. It's too late.
Wow.
You're married in community of property. So that means you share in the assets and liabilities of both parties before and during the marriage.
Okay, so your creditors become her creditors and hers become yours.
Correct.
Assets become, it's just everything goes into one pot.
Correct. And as much as people who get married may not have that many assets when they do get married, the problem is when you go into business, there's no protection for the other party should the party in business go under or go insolvent.
Yes.
So then there's no protection for the other party because you own all your assets 50-50.
Yeah. So when you are now married out of community property, you have an antenuptial contract. So the other one
is obviously when you have an antenuptial contract, when you're married out of community of property. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that you're either married then with the accrual system, or without the accrual system.
All right.
The accrual system, very simply, again, if you don't specify it in your antenuptial contract, then you're normally married out of community of property with the accrual system.
Okay.
The accrual system really just means that should the marriage dissolve by virtue of a divorce or death, then both parties will share in the growth within their marriage.
Yes.
So if the wife was the stay-at-home mom looking after the children and the dad was the executive and he builds up an estate of 10 million rand and she's got 0, then obviously she will share 50% in his 10 million rand estate upon death and or divorce.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So that's very important. If you have a look at the next slide, it'll just show that a couple of points. So with the application of the accrual system, the estate remains separate. You share in the financial growth once the marriage has been dissolved, and you may decide to exclude certain assets in that antenuptial contract. And if you don't have the accrual system, then estate remains separate, so you still have two separate estates, but then when divorce or death happens, then you will not share in the growth of each other's estates.
All these complicated things. It's just supposed to be what, you know, I trust you, you trust me, and...
But you know, people often get married with stars in their eyes, and then the next morning the sun comes out and they haven't dealt with these things. So it is very important that you do your homework, that you make sure that you meet with a certified financial planner and an attorney to make sure that these contracts are drafted up correctly before you go down the aisle and enjoy your life together.
And then with that ring, you win. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Stay tuned. Be sure to tune in every single morning at 6:50 for your financial talk. This week we're talking about those things. If only I knew.
Gap covered tomorrow.
Gap covered tomorrow. If you want to know exactly what that's all about, be sure to tune in. Just after 7, we have your news roundup coming up. And right now, Liesl is talking to... When I was a little bitty baby, my mama would... Actually, Ewan's talking to them. Have a look at